In the know.
Good evening, everyone.
In the know.
Tony Reeves.
Fire. Following the news in any way, shape, or form.
No shortage of things to talk about.
What did Reeves mean? What will it bring? This is a reality we simply have to accept.
Tony Reeves.
Fire.
Tony Reeves. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of In the Know of Tony Reeves. I am Tony Reeves, so let's go ahead and get rolling. Today, I want to talk to you about leaning into your legacy. A lot of us will feel like others are in a position, because you probably hear this a lot from an educational standpoint about legacy admissions and legacy hires and things like that, and we get annoyed when we hear that. And the reality is the reason why we get annoyed is because we lean into this perception that there are individuals who have access to opportunities as a result of who they are and who they've been related to as opposed to others. And let's just be clear about something. That's exactly what legacy is. But the reality is that we all are legacies in our own right. We may not want to afford ourselves the ability of leaning into those legacies because they may be something that we're not interested in doing. But the reality is that we are all a legacy to something. If we're fortunate, if you're maybe an orphan or whatever the case may be. I'm just talking about the general situation. And what do I mean? Well, let me just give you a great example. Several years ago, I had this conversation with my cousin. He is a prominent dentist, very successful one at that. And it was funny because his dad was a dentist as well. Now, he and I both grew up in Arkansas, and we used to both run and joke about how much we wanted to get the hell out of the state of Arkansas. But at the time when we were trying to get out, both of us had interest in becoming doctors, but both of our paths went slightly different. He ended up becoming a dentist. I ended up becoming an attorney. But at one point, I had asked the question to him, are you going back to Arkansas to take over your dad, who is also a dentist, his practice? My uncle had actually, went to college, went to dental school, and then literally came back to Arkansas and opened up his own practice. And I can probably say with the greatest degree of deference, his practice ran from, because when I was a kid, probably about 5 or 6 years old, his practice was going, I would probably say a good 20 to 30 years, a fairly consistent practice. At one particular point, he was operating out of 2 different cities in Arkansas. And so I asked the question, I said, are you going to come back and take that over? And he was like, heck no, why would I do that? I said, because your dad, what's going on? And so he turns to me, and I think he was thinking this was going to be a great counter because he knew I was from, and he knew we both had no burning desire to come back to Arkansas. And so he came to me and he said, all right, well, let's keep it 100. If your mother was an attorney, would you come back to practice? And she had her own firm. Would you come back to practice? And in Arkansas, I said, hell yeah. He said, really? And I don't think he believed me at first because we had both, like I said, we both grew up in Arkansas. We both grew up with this perception that we had, with this intention that we were going to leave Arkansas. We weren't trying to come back no time soon. But I took it a step further because I had to explain to him. I said, let's think about this for a second. The reason why I would come back is for a few reasons. One, my mother would have been an established attorney, which means I would be coming back and learning from someone who is actually an established attorney. Two, I would be learning within her practice. So this is not me going to some other foreign employer. I'd be working for my mom. That's two. Three, my mother has established a brand. She had established a reputation, and she had also established a customer base. Things foundationally I can build on. And so when if I come there, I would have the ability to basically build on the brand that she has created. I would be able to build on the customer and client base that she has created. And then fourth and finally, this is the biggest thing I told him, I didn't have to stay there. I literally could create a brand there, come there, build it up, and I could easily have practice in another state. Like, if I'm practicing law in the state of Arkansas, I'm going to have a license in the state because I'm from Arkansas. I practice in Florida. I would have had my license in Florida and a license in Arkansas. There's nothing that say I had to stay there. The name recognition could have been there, and that would have been a great opportunity for me to hire partners, get me some additional dentists, but the foundation would have given me the ability to do so many other things. Unlike when I started my own practice for a while, I was starting it from scratch. In this instance, I'm not. And so my point to him didn't matter because I knew he wasn't going to come back home anyway. But my point was, I was a legacy. Under the scenario that he suggested, I was a legacy. Just like under the scenario I was suggested for him, he would be a legacy. And why am I making that distinction, making that important? Is that a lot of our parents, and don't get me wrong, because a lot of our parents, depending on what their occupation is, they may not want you to follow in their footsteps. If they're in a field that they just don't want you to have to do what they went through, that I get. I understand that. Right there with you. But if they are in a position that they can position you in a certain way, or you have the ability to be affiliated with them in a particular way that can give you an entry point that others don't have, why would you not lean into that? Just like when you see individuals who they go to the same colleges that their parents went through. It's not that they're going there because they're like, maybe this is a good school my mom went there. A part of that is because of the fact that they're going to a school that their parent went to, and their parents can share insight about how to navigate that school because they went there. Now, the legacy may get them into the school, but they still have to matriculate through that school. Same thing with a job. If you're in a job that your parents, if you're going into a field that your parents were prominent in for 20 to 30 years, it's reasonable to expect that if you go into it, that there's going to be people who are going to say, I know your mom, I know your dad. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever, not even remotely. So why is that important? It's important because if you can appreciate the fact that you have loved ones who have put in the work, they've gone through the trials and tribulations, they've established a reputation and they've established their brand of who they are, and you have the opportunity to segue into that, leaning on the reputation that they've created for themselves, that by de facto is extended to you to some degree. You can use that to give yourself entryway in a lot of different ways. Am I telling you that you should automatically do that? No, I'm just telling you that you have to be strategic and say to yourself that if you have an interest in something that is similar to what your parents or people in your family has done, you are by definition a legacy. And by utilizing that, you can lean into the fact that you can maximize the fact that you now have an entry point that the other people don't have, but you also have the ability to be able to engage people and engage systems and engage things in such a way that'll help you move towards your goal a lot faster, even if it means utilizing the resources that were available to your parents or your grandparents or whoever in your family, because guess what? That's what it means to be a legacy. Again, I know it's annoying, especially when you're dealing with having people around you. And how many of us have dealt with that? Because I'm not going to lie. I have seen that where I've had friends who worked with people who have capitalized on the legacy. It's their mama's business. It's your dad's business. And the person comes in and they basically act like, I am the heir apparent, so I don't have to learn anything. Those are not the people that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about those blithering idiots. I'm talking about the people who have the wherewithal to know that moving into these spaces puts them in a position to be able to make moves that they would not have otherwise had, and they are doing so from a calculated standpoint. And if you are in the same position, you should be doing the exact same thing too as well. Because guess what? Part of the fact of the matter is that time is a very, very valuable resource. We don't have a lot of time to do all the things that we want to do in our lifetime. So if people can position you in a position so that you can now learn from the mistakes or learn from the opportunities or benefit from the relationships and the reputation that's been created as a result of this, why would you not take advantage of it? I'm not saying you got to be a jerk about it, but know at the end of the day that if you have the opportunity to lean into the legacy that has been put before you, hey, make like Fat Joe and lean back. All right, everyone. Again, this is Tony Reeves. As always, I want to thank you for joining me for another edition of In the Know. And as always, I have to end the show by asking one very simple question. Are you ready for the Anthony Reeves experience?